Well, for Stephen Hall, it started one sunny afternoon while he was sitting on his back deck watching sunlight bounce off his roof. After some investigation, installing solar panels seemed like a no-brainer to him. Now, 3 years later, he's advocating the power of solar to others. He's one of the people trying to kickstart the first solar cooperative in Regina. Last night, the Regina Solar Co-op met at the Artful Dodger, and Stephen is here to talk now about the progress of the project. Hello.
Good morning.
So what happened last night at this meeting?
Well, last night's meeting was actually the second meeting of the co-op group. We had our first one about 2 weeks ago, and it was really well attended. We expected about 30 people. We had over 100. The place was packed. Yeah, a lot of interest.
Did that surprise you?
It did, actually. It was great. It was a great surprise. My role was actually to present kind of a case study. You know, we've had solar. My family's had solar for 3 years now, and so my sort of role is to sort of say, well, look, here's my experience, and I've shared my bills and tracked all of the costs associated with it, and so on, and compared it to when I didn't have solar. And that's the really surprising part of this is that the cost of that technology has dropped so rapidly in the last 10 years that now I actually pay $13 a month less than I did 3 years ago, and that includes the capital cost repayment. So
that must be one of the things people bring up as a barrier, assuming that it's going to be expensive.
Exactly, but the reality is when you do the math on it, as I've done, the monthly cost, including capital cost repayment, including paying for that for the solar panels in the system, is actually less than what I used to pay. And of course, in March of 2018. There's a 5% increase coming from SaskPower. They've asked for that, and there'll be a 5% power increase. And that savings of $13 a month will actually go up to $22 a month. So that barrier is really a perceived barrier. The reality is the big problem is the actual chunk of money that you need to be able to have access to in order to benefit from that. So our system,
the initial investment?
Yeah, exactly.
So what would a co-op look like? What's the idea behind that?
Well, the co-op group, we're kind of coming together and exploring a couple of options. One option is kind of a classic co-op along the lines of what they're doing in Saskatchewan at the SAS co-op there. But the second one,
what's their model?
Well, their model is a co-op where you would have a number of members. You can have a common share, a preferred share. A common share gets you basically a membership, gets you to participate in the program. Preferred share gets you actually, for I think it's about $1,000. You can get a return on investment on that and participate. The idea is to have a big solar installation somewhere and
feeding everybody who's a member.
Actually, it's feeding the grid, but you'd benefit. Through the sale of that electricity to SaskPower.
Yeah, so you're kind of a business owner.
Yeah, exactly. The second model, which we're exploring, and there's a lot of interest in this, and this is in a way a bit more along the lines of what I've done, is to have solar on your own roof. So if you've got a property that where there's some solar potential there, the idea is for us to get together as a group and actually use group buying power to reduce the cost of solar. So, and we do that in a couple of ways. One is for that group to kind of educate themselves about solar and the possibility of their home to have solar and so on. That actually reduces something called soft costs, which are a part of all the vendors' costs. Because when a vendor puts a quote to a person for solar, that includes the cost of them sort of educating them and others that actually didn't go through. So if we can bring a pre-educated group and then apply just group buying power, the idea is that we would approach vendors with a bundle of people that are ready to go solar, run an RFP and get a more competitive price as a result.
So what else is needed when you talk about, going from solar curious to solar serious? What else is needed to take people who are curious, and I think there is a lot of curiosity out there, to actually making the investment and being serious about it?
Well, the number one thing is literacy. The number one thing is just understanding what it is and what it isn't. and understanding really the amazing potential we have in Saskatchewan. There's a map of the PV solar potential, and anyone can kind of Google a PV solar potential in Canada, and it shows where the best place to live in Canada is, and we're in it. We are literally at the epicenter. The solar potential.
We being the whole province, or we being
particularly
Regina,
the lower
or?
part, the
Yeah.
lower part of the
Yeah.
province. The southern part of Saskatchewan is literally the hot zone in Canada when it comes to solar potential.
But how are we doing compared to the other provinces?
Well, we're lagging behind, quite
Yeah.
frankly. There hasn't been as much uptake of that potential as I certainly would like to see. And again, for me, having had it for 3 years now and being able to sort of see it and see we're producing electricity, we're producing it for free. I mean, that's the key thing, is that there's no marginal cost to the creation of this energy. And that's a really compelling aspect to what's happened with solar now, because the capital cost has come down so low. And because the marginal cost of producing another kilowatt hour is zero, it doesn't matter how cheap coal gets or gas gets or whatever. The marginal cost of those fuels is never going to be zero. Whereas the marginal cost of solar, the sunlight, is zero. It's a little bit like the comparison between a film camera and a digital camera, right? With a film camera, every time you take a picture, you're spending something, because the cost of the film, the cost of the processing, all of that, there's a cost associated with it. With a digital camera, you take a picture, zero marginal cost. So the idea of owning solar panels is a little bit like, if you sort of follow the metaphor, like owning a digital camera, where yes, there's an upfront capital cost. You have to buy that thing in the first place, but then after you've got it, that energy is free. And the great news is that the panels are guaranteed for 25 years. And so because of that, that's why when I do the math on my system, I say, okay, well, the upfront capital cost is in our case, it was $28,000, but we got $5,000 back from the net metering program from SaskPower. So our cost was $23,000, but if we amortize that over the guaranteed life of the system, that's 25 years. That actual capital cost is $125.
Okay.
So it's really quite reasonable.
Have to leave it at that for now, but thanks for coming in.
Okay, no worries.
That's Stephen Hall, one of the leaders trying to start a solar cooperative in Regina. The next meeting for the group is November 20th at the Artful Dodger.